Hello and welcome to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day, and on this episode, we're ending 2024 with a bang as I welcome Ron Paul to the show, a three-time candidate for President of the United States, an author and host of the Liberty Report podcast. We're going to discuss how the United States can tackle the seemingly endless debt and deficits issue, whether gold could make a return to the monetary system, his roadmap for putting an end to the Federal Reserve, and so much more. I hope you'll enjoy my conversation with Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, it is an honor to have you on the show today. I want to start things off by discussing the massive debt and deficits issue in the United States, including the off-balance sheet liabilities like entitlement spending. How is it possible, if at all, to turn this around and get America's financial house in order?
Oh, it's possible. And if they did the right things, you could have a transition. But the odds of that, after having a little experience in Washington, I would say the odds of that happening are probably 0%. They're just not going to do it. But if they cut back on spending, remove the need and a desire to monetize debt, shrink the size of government, live within our means. A person and a company can do that, and sometimes they have to. But markets eventually force people to do it, and they force governments to do it because debt gets too heavy. You can't just adding new debt. People give up on the currency, and it doesn't solve the problem. But the market is it's too much. It's too much. You're spending too much. The system just doesn't work. So when they do that, then they bring on a crisis, and there will be liquidation. See, take a country like Zimbabwe, there's liquidation. Goes to zero. How do you wipe out a debt? And that's one of the reasons we have constant inflation, because it helps the government because they pay off all their debt with cheaper money. So if you can get a 50% depreciation of your dollar, which we're quite capable of doing over and over again, actually the real debt goes down. But eventually that ends, and then it loses control. But the dollar in the United States has been blessed with some benefits that we don't deserve and are not wise. It just causes the bubble to get bigger and bigger. I think we have probably the biggest financial bubble ever in history worldwide, because we have the reserve currency of the world. We have been a wealthy country. We've had, an instinct for free markets and sound money. Although we don't follow them anymore, we still benefit from its history. But what we've witnessed now in the last several years, for a while, the debt it seemed to be so bad. But all of us, $36 trillion? It makes no sense whatsoever, but that's the market speaking. And the other big fallacy that markets speak to eliminate these problems is it takes away from the Federal Reserve and other people interested that want to fix interest rate. So it's the interest rates that give us the most important information for anybody involved in business. And that tells a lot of people what to do, what the investors, the savers, and the spenders, and indicating what is happening. But, interest rates can be, for government, 4 or 5%, but they had them lower than that, but eventually the government starts pushing things up. But, I think the real interest rate is the money under the circumstances of people who are having a tough time, and more people are. And that's when interest rates for them is 20%, on the credit card. That's telling them what's going on here. But nobody knows exactly how long it'll last. It probably, intellectually you say they don't deserve that much of a blessing on all this free money and free wealth, because it's nothing more than a fraud game. It's counterfeiting. You steal wealth, and this is the reason. And it's very tempting. It's an addiction. And a lot of people have to be sucked into it because they believe they're going to benefit by the government sending them more money, which is the problem.
Hey guys, just a quick break to hear from today's sponsor, ARC Silver Gold Osmium. They offer personalized service and competitive prices with no minimum purchase for silver, gold, platinum, or osmium. Here's just some of the comments left on this YouTube channel about ARC SGO and owner Ian Everard. Have bought from ARC, good source and price. I cannot say enough good about Ian and his company. He is the most honest individual I could find in order to buy precious metals. If you are looking to buy precious metals, I recommend Ian at ARC Silver. He is a straight shooter. So go to arcsgo.com and contact Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. It was only yesterday in the span of human history that the dollar was removed from some form of gold backing, and a lot of people have pointed to the issues facing America economically today being tied to that event. Would you agree with that? And do you think there is any possibility of the US returning to some form of a gold standard, whether that's fully backed or partially backed by gold?
Yes, there is a chance, maybe after a great crisis exists. But if you wanted to, work a way back, you could start by government selling bonds backed by gold, and it's temporary. I sort of I like it because it's emphasizing gold, but it's not the solution. The solution is we have to curb the appetite, for big government. But you mentioned there was a time over our history where, essentially there was a definition of the unit of account. We don't have the definition of a unit of account, and yet it runs the world. And, in spite of the challenge to the dollar, which probably will continue to increase, it's something that they can't stop from happening because the market is demanding, what's happening. But, when our country started, it was accepted that gold was essentially, for an ounce of gold, to say $20 an ounce, and that's how our country started. And then we had a Federal Reserve System, and they said, well, we're going to have it at $35 an ounce, and then the money, and they proceeded. But there was always, even when the United States, we weren't allowed to own gold. Those were the years I was interested in money for a lot of different reasons, and in the financial system and the monetary system. So when they, kept spending, after World War II, even Henry Hazlitt said, this IMF and all this thing can't work. It's gimmickry too. And he was right. And they said, we were going to tell the world, the whole country, the whole world, if you maintain a currency and link it to gold and make all your international transactions with the dollar, we will do that. So it was $35 an ounce. But when I started reading about this even as the late 50s into the 60s, people were already saying, we're printing, but we were buying up the empire. We were building an empire. So, and nobody was calling us on us. They just let us do it. So we kept printing all that money, and the predictions of the 60s, were what I watched carefully. And I believe the people who were doing the warning in 68 on, there was sort of a side market for gold. It wasn't $35 an ounce, but it was inevitable that they could not maintain this fictitious gold standard. And I can remember it dramatically for the moment that ended. And that was when Richard Nixon gave a speech on Sunday night. I was watching television, and I sort of, wow, this is it. And that is when I was motivated to start talking about monetary policy. And that, weirdly so, guided me toward at least putting my name out there for running for office, which I did as a lark, and a chance to talk about what I saw coming. And so that was when, gold no longer could be $35 an ounce. We had always guaranteed that with foreign holders of dollars, they'd also, and then the French came in, they started taking all our gold. So we had to close the gold window so we had a little bit left over. And to me, that was a huge event. It still is a huge event, and more people, are talking about August 15th, 1971. And if you look at the charts, they're very dramatic on what happened to money supply and prices. It's amazing that it's been held together and the trust has been placed. And a few things that happen is because we are a powerful country. We have a lot of natural resources, so that can compensate. And we had military power, so this all kept things going for a while longer. But we're up against the wall. We're up against the wall, and there's going to be a limit. And that's why you hear stories about BRIC and other people are using other things. I think they're going to continue, and I think that will erode even further the confidence in the dollar. So, but the problem isn't complicated. As long as we had at least the pretend definition of the unit of account, things could be used, and we got away with a lot. But now we have no unit of account other than government taking care of us, whatever we need, and if there's a problem, if there's inflation, the people say the prices are too high. Help us. Send us some more money. So it's an addiction. It's crazy. So I am very, very pessimistic on how this is going to end, but I'm quite optimistic about the amount of education going on, because when I went to Congress first in the 70s, people laughed at me and did all kinds of things about, why are you talking about this Federal Reserve? We don't even know what the Federal Reserve is. So I got on the banking committee, and but now there's a lot of people like you and others who talk about it and understand the monetary issue, and that comes first. So when a crisis comes, I'm just hoping that enough people will say we need reform, we need real reform, and there's an effort there. When you look at what Elon Musk is trying to do with the committee of efficiency, people, it's sensing that the people want changes, even though they have a big obstacle, because there's a lot. I keep praising them for their efforts, but yet today the budget came out, and our budget is horrible. It's going up. They couldn't even wait till the regular year. We haven't passed the budget yet, but we're gonna supplement it. So they $100 and some billion of supplement, but they did give themselves a pay raise. So they're going to hang around for a little bit until the whole thing crashes.
Well, I'd like to get your thoughts then on the Department of Government Efficiency, because it brings to mind the Grace Commission under the Reagan administration. And while the Grace Commission did manage to reduce some wasteful spending, the vast majority of their recommendations never made it through Congress. Is anything different this time around, or does DOGE face the same problems?
Well, I think two things. The determination to do something is every bit as strong, if not stronger. But the problem is ever that much bigger. It's huge to do it, but it's very healthy to get around to the right discussion, and they are. But even though I work with the DOGE Efficiency Committee, there's nothing official about it. There's no membership, but they've been respectful, and they look at my stuff and sometimes publish my suggestions, and it's easy. I sent one note in and I said, this is the easy one. Cut out 4 and 8. And, people who aren't, who don't want to be worried about Social Security. Yeah, that's good. It's a small number, but it was a huge amount of people. They know we have to do something like that. So that, I think the problem is bigger, but I think education is moving along. I think Austrian economics is better understood. I think groups like the Mises Institute and others, and we contribute to that, because I think it's not going to happen. The politicians aren't going to, if you just look at what's going on behind the scenes right now, yes, there's more talk about it, but they, what do they do if they try to cut? If it's the Speaker of the House, they fire them, because it's not doable. And That's why it's going to continue. Then it's held together with a subjective thing, and that is confidence. Yes, there's been an illusion of confidence, even in the 50s and the 60s when Henry Hazlitt said, this is a bad system. People knew it was going to happen, but now, they're still there, but it's shrinking. The confidence is being lost. And, of course, with our foundation, what we talk about is a lot about the issues. One is monetary issue and economics. The other one is our foreign policy. We don't like foreign intervention, and we believe our Constitution tells us what kind of a foreign policy we would have. And the one term that they used that I liked was no entangling alliances. We have too many, and we should, when Switzerland was more ideal, I say we need to be like a giant Switzerland, and have it. Just think how long the Swiss franc was held in high regard, and still to a degree, because of people being very confident, in that. So that's what's necessary. But I think, when I spoke out to the college students, it seems like if they heard it, they could grasp it very easy. It's not like, oh, I will have to explain to you Keynesian economics. You have to have a real good computer, and we have to put everything into this, and this will tell us, it will tell the Fed what the interest rate should be next week. The Fed doesn't have the biggest idea what they're going to do tomorrow. And even if they did have an idea what they're going to do, there's nothing that says it's anywhere close to the market. So I say, people ask me, what are you going to do if you were in the Federal Reserve? I said, I'd resign first and make sure that I don't know what the interest rate should be, but the market does. And that's why I'm a strong believer in the marketplace.
Well, let's talk about the Fed, because on a recent edition of the Liberty Report, you discussed a roadmap to ending the Federal Reserve. So walk us through how you would achieve that. And do you think it's something that President Trump would be open to discussing?
I think he will, but not to the degree we want, because he hasn't challenged us. In the past, if you said that to an average Republican, they said, get out of our way. They treated me in Congress not meanly. They seemed to respect what I was saying, but it was always total ignoring. So if I had gone there with the whole idea, oh, I'll have an influence. I think if I became chairman of a banking committee, I'd have a real influence. But I knew that was not a reasonable approach. First, it doesn't work that way. And I didn't have any desire to do it, because I was there for the purpose of doing what I did, is try to call attention to where the real problems were. And somebody said, well, why are you supporting Elon Musk and cutting spending? I said, I was there in 23 years. I never voted for any budget because I said I thought that my interpretation is that we should have to do it. But that has to change. Well, you could start by the one thing that I've done and emphasized and got attention is get the Fed, get the Fed audited, that the people will know a lot more about it. And the other thing is how did the Fed actually come alive? Well, Christmas Eve, they passed it in what was the year they passed that, at the dead of night. And, that was probably 1913. And repealed the Federal Reserve Act. Well, I mean, we went in the early years without a central bank, and it could be done. So, and all those things should be talked about to make the point, because nobody thinks in those terms. They think, well, what we need are better managers. We just need somebody that knows how to manage the Fed a little bit better. We don't want all this silly talk by Ron Paul, because he doesn't make any sense. But what they want to do is they want to have secrecy. That's why there's no audit. And they argue that they have to be independent, but independent to the Fed and to the Congress says we shouldn't interfere. What they're saying is we want secrecy because a lot of special interests are taken care of. But the only thing that's going to stop them is the marketplace when these deficits they're uncontrollable right now. So you can't systematically back off. I don't think that's going to happen. But the responsibility of people who understand this is to get as many people protecting themselves and understanding it, because people say, well, what do you do to protect against this? And they're talking about financial, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I said, but the only thing that really can protect us is if you support liberty. Because if in 1921, the depression was ignored, and it was over in a year. So if the whole thing really comes down and there's 90% of all wealth wiped out, if we had a true sense of what liberty was about, and you had a sound currency, and you had a society that was all voluntarism, whether it was in economics, everything's voluntary, whether it's social or religious, voluntary, and getting along with other countries, everything voluntary, that we wouldn't be sending troops to a country because we want to, enhance our security and all that. Voluntarism, I believe, can you imagine what people would feel like if I don't have any forms to fill out and I don't have to pay any taxes? They'd go to work, yeah, and they'd rebuild quickly. But so far, the expansion of government. But what's happening now, with Trump and all, there are now people starting to say at least too much, and we have to back off. But I say too much, and it's going to come down. You better be ready to deal with what you want it replaced with.
Well, speaking of auditing, I wonder what your thoughts are on the stated gold reserves in the United States. Currently stated at 8,000 tons approximately. That is the largest official number of any country by far. However, the gold reserves have not been audited since the Eisenhower administration. Do you think the official number is accurate, below, or above the true amount of gold held by the U.S.? And do you think that we could see a full audit at some point, maybe under Trump?
I don't think there'll be an honest audit, and I think even the past ones are fudging things. I was on a gold commission, which Jesse Helm and I had organized at the end of the 70s, in the midst of when gold went from 35 up to $800. And one of the proposals I had for the gold commission was, to have an honest audit of the gold. And there were 17 of us on the commission. And so we had a vote, made them vote on it. 15 voted, no, we don't want to have an audit of the gold. And so see, the other people that were appointed, there was only one or two of us that was independent minded. The other ones are appointed by the deep state. It's just like everybody that goes to the Fed, they're part of the deep state. So they're not going to be helpful to it. And I think that's one reason why it's hard for the establishment to pinpoint Trump and say, he satisfies us, and the deep state gets together and say, yeah, he has some dumb ideas, but we'll put the pressure on him. It's the fact that they can't do that. And even though he isn't pure libertarian, the fact that he might listen to one, just they're hysterical. That's why they had to turn it into a hate campaign. And yet, it's something that has to be done eventually, because the crowd up there, you're not going to be able to change their minds. The Congress, there's 435. I met a lot of them, and most of them I got along with. But they were all educated in a government school. They were all education with Keynesian economics, and they're not likely to even entertain these ideas. But I do think there's an attitude shifting. I think the people, just like when COVID finally had to, come back to a little bit of common sense, the people were way ahead of the government. Matter of fact, the government is still, giving RFK trouble. Oh, he might want to look into this thing about, the danger of some of our vaccines. So they're nervous about that. But guess what? It was the people that discovered it. It was the parents and parent teachers, and found out, and they're starting to right now recognize the idiotic, evil things that are preached, socially and sexually and all this in our government schools. So that's the reason the founders never gave any authority for the government. The states could do it, but the federal government was never to be involved in education. And it is way too much involved until that might be the most important thing. Somebody told me once, I have a little homeschooling program and it's successful, but nobody knows much about it. And somebody came up and said, this is the most important thing I'm doing, is the fact that we're taking kids, where they're having trouble at the government schools, and we've had some good people teach good economics, and Tom Woods teaches a history and all this thing. And the people who go there are very pleased. But I think those are seeds you plant. And one thing that I have noticed that over the years, I can always think, especially before I was in Congress, I'm only talking to 20 people here or 20 people there. But it's amazing how many of those went on to start their own organization. A lot of people that, got involved in the presidential campaigns, they have their own organizations, and it expands. So I believe the saying that if an idea whose time has come, you can't stop it with an army. And ideas are powerful, and it motivates people. And when people ask me, what should I do to, have more protection? Do whatever you can to promote the cause of liberty and freedom and understanding of property rights and understanding what a First Amendment really means will solve our problems for us.
I love that. And I know we're on limited time here, but I do have to ask you about uranium, because a lot of uranium investors do watch this show. And recently, Russia has put a curb on exports of enriched uranium to the United States. The United States has very little, almost zero domestically mined uranium at the moment, and yet nuclear power accounts for nearly 20% of total energy production in the US. Do you think we're going to see perhaps more domestic mining? Do you think the government should incentivize uranium mining companies to produce more uranium to help secure supplies at home?
Well, the freer the market, the freedom of choice that you can get to. There are times there's a saying about clear and present danger, and if that exists, I don't I don't want somebody coming and building a arms manufacturer next to my house, and somebody says, "Well, that needs the government to regulate." No, you just need deed restrictions. There's ways to do that in the marketplace. But when it comes to nuclear, I've been a real strong supporter of nuclear power, because it's like everything that we do. I mean, there's a lot of way of killing people, short of an atomic bomb. And so I think that I think it can be worked out, but I would think there are times when governments would have some regulations, but states can do that, individuals can do it, companies can do it. But once you do this, I mean, they were supposed to limit the nuclear weapons right now, but nobody knows. Some countries have a bunch of them and they don't even admit they have them. So they're out there. So it's going to be the character of the people involved that really counts. But I just don't think, I think nuclear is an answer. And every once in a while you'll bump into a progressive, it looks like it's clean. It's cleaned up to a degree, unless you go to the next process. What we're really doing are making bombs. But I think that's true about everything. What about airplanes? They're great for us, but bombers, we're still using the B-52. We're still pulling them out and dropping bombs on people, so it's the policies and the individuals that really count. But it is. I think more people are starting to be more open-minded, mainly, and it's interesting. And that's what's so wonderful about libertarianism. A lot of times you can approach progressives on, foreign policy and civil liberties, and even on this issue of nuclear power.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paul. This has been a fantastic conversation. Very much appreciate you coming on the show. I'm going to put a link in the description below to the Liberty Report, as well as your account on X, so people can follow you there. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge with the audience.
Great to be with you.
And thank you for joining us today. This episode was brought to you by ARC Silver Gold Osmium. For all your precious metals needs, head to arcsgo.com and contact owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.